Greetings friends, my name is Pavel Stelmach and I'm glad to present for you the new episode of our daily wrap-up series. The Russians struck another blow at the residential building, this time in Kramatorsk in the Donetsk region. At the same time, the blow was performed by an Iskander missile, which the Russians call highly accurate, with an error of up to 7 meters. So what does it turn out to be? Either Russian weapons are not so high quality as propagandists say, or they specifically hit civilian victims. Currently, according to preliminary information, 3 people have died.
As for the victims, we have 3 people died, 8 were hospitalized and 22 people sought medical help. Now you see that the rubble is almost dismantled, and if you go from the back of the building, then the rubble is also almost dismantled there, and we have a little left to reach the basement. In addition to the destroyed house, where one entrance was completely destroyed, 8 more buildings were damaged today.
I would like to note that the attack on a residential building took place after 9 p.m., when people should be sitting at home, resting, cooking dinner and preparing for the new day. However, as a result of the full-scale invasion, most of the people left, and those who remained are in danger every minute. Today, the occupiers hit the city again, and yesterday's shelling was not the first. And this is footage from the shelling on April the 8th. Then the Russians hit the railway station, a few minutes before the evacuation train was supposed to depart from there. 61 people, including 7 children, died as a result of the insidious missile attack. The murderers of the residents of Kramatorsk by the Russians testified to the true value of the Kremlin's statements about the alleged protection of Donbas and rescue from genocide of its residents. The Russian occupiers are destroying Donbas, destroying its industry and cities, killing and forcing its inhabitants to become refugees. The real defenders of Donbas are the defense forces of Ukraine. They are fighting to return peace, security and normal life in the east of our country.
A residential building, a missile strike, civilian killed and trapped under the rubble. This is not a repetition of history. This is the daily reality of our country. A country bordering absolute evil, and a country that has to overcome it in order to reduce to zero the likelihood of such tragedies happening again. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on Facebook.
Currently, Russia is preparing for a new attempt at a massive offensive and seizure of the east of our country. As Andriy Chernyak, representative of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, said in a comment to Kyiv Post, Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered the troops to seize the entire territory of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions of Ukraine by March 2023. However, if the Russians continue to shell the cities of Donbas like this, the entire territory will simply be burned, not captured. President Zelensky's peace formula seeks to take away Russia's ability to commit the crime of aggression against Ukraine and to ensure safety and justice for the global community. Since 2014, the Russian leadership has been blatantly disregarding the UN Charter, infringing upon the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. The Russian occupation forces are also blatantly disregarding the rules of warfare, with Ukrainian and international investigators discovering more and more mass graves with civilians, torture chambers, and sexual crimes in the liberated territories of Ukraine. Russia needs to be held accountable for their atrocities against Ukrainians. All responsible states must take a stand for justice by aiding in the establishment of the special tribunal for Russia's crime of aggression against Ukraine. And we are glad that on the initiative of the Baltic states, the chairs of the Foreign Affairs Committees of Parliaments of 19 countries and the European Parliament on January the 30th issued a joint statement in which they expressed support to the investigation of war crimes and crimes against humanity by the International Criminal Court, as well as advocated the establishment of a dedicated international tribunal for prosecuting the crime of aggression committed against Ukraine by Russia's military invasion and bringing the perpetrators to justice.
We underline that the crimes committed so far by the armed force of the Russian Federation in Ukraine demonstrate cynicism and impunity and a disregard for the war regulation and laws that limit the use of military force. We condemn the Russian Federation's war of aggression against Ukraine and do not recognize the annexation of the captured territories. Joint statement of the need to prosecute Russia's international crimes in Ukraine.
Currently, Ukraine is conducting consultations regarding the place and date of the Peace Formula summit, Volodymyr Zelensky said yesterday. The number of states that will be able to attend the summit depends on the date and place. For us, the most important thing is that it should be a place and a date that can ensure the maximum number of partner states. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian establishment is still focused on the Ukraine-EU summit, which will take place tomorrow. However, the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, the head of the diplomatic department, Josep Borrell, and 16 other EU commissioners arrived in Kyiv today. This is the largest delegation to Ukraine since the beginning of the full-scale Russian invasion.
We are starting two very important European integration dates in Ukraine. This is the time when our joint agreements and decisions here in Kyiv will mean the strengthening of the entire Europe. Volodymyr Zelensky, president of Ukraine, on Facebook.
The Ukraine-EU summit will the first meeting at the highest level since Ukraine became a candidate for EU membership last year. The joint decision to hold a summit in Ukraine, in the capital of a state at war, is a powerful signal of support from Brussels and faith in our resilience and prospects. Ukraine stands firmly on the path of European integration, and the full-scale war has not shaken but only strengthened our strategic course. Ukraine has made significant progress in reforms and therefore counts on a possible assessment of our homework. No country in the world except Ukraine was preparing to become a member of the European Union in the conditions of a devastating, all-encompassing war. And we will do that too. Ukraine's stay in the EU is quite natural and corresponds to the spirit of a united Europe, which grew up on the ashes of the World War II. On Friday, February the 3rd, the administration of the US president will announce the delivery of long-range missiles that can hit targets at a distance of 150 kilometers. This is reported by the Wall Street Journal. It is about high-precision ground-launched small-diameter bombs. According to the publication, the weapons will be delivered within a framework of the Initiative for Promotion of Security of Ukraine, which finances the acquisition or creation of new weapons and systems, and not their removal from American arsenals. The Boeing company, which is one of the manufacturers of the GLSDB, previously reported that it has stocks of this weapon. The U.S. Deputy Secretary for Defense for Political Affairs Colin Kahl reported on January 16th that U.S. recognizes that Ukraine needs to be able to strike further from the front line.
Each war stage requires certain weapons. Everything RF reserves in the occupied territories require specific from Ukraine and partners. So first, there is already a tank coalition, logistics training supplied. Second, there are already talks on long-range missiles and attack aircraft supply. Mikhailo Podolyak, the advisor to the head of the Office of the President of Ukraine.
Currently, the United States is preparing a package of military aid to Ukraine in the amount of $2.2 billion. In addition to the already mentioned GLSDBs, the package is also expected to include support equipment for the Patriot air defense system, precision munitions, and Javelin anti-tank missiles, Reuters sources added. In addition, it is planned to supply armored personnel carriers with protection against mines and ambush attacks, GMLRS-guided rocket salvo-fire systems, and ammunition. Someone may ask how missiles with a longer range can affect military operations, and the answer is obvious. They will allow Ukraine to hit important military targets that are currently out of reach, and will help the armed forces of Ukraine to continue counterattacks, while making it difficult for the Russians to operate in their own rear. At the same time, they are quite accurate, because they are controlled with the help of a GPS navigation system, capable of eliminating some electronic interference, can be used in the weather conditions and against armored vehicles. Therefore, such weapons will speed up the deoccupation of the Azov region and Crimea, and after that the entire Ukrainian territory. And after this happens, Russia will hopefully leave the occupied territories of other countries too.
Russia has to learn where its borders are. Georgian issues must be on the negotiating table, because no one should think that this war can be resolved without Russia's retreat from all the occupied territories in the region. Salome Zurabishvili, president of Georgia, in the interview with Bloomberg.
Also, Zurabishvili said that Russia should abandon the almost 15-year occupation of part of the territory of her country as part of a possible peace agreement to end the war against Ukraine. Among all the countries whose territories are currently occupied by Russia, Ukraine is making the greatest efforts to liberate its land and people. Despite the fear and caution of Georgia and Moldova in relation to Russian aggression in Ukraine, Ukrainians support their territorial integrity and support the deoccupation of Abkhazia, the Tsinghvali region, and the left bank of the Dniester. The Chechen Republic of Ichkeria and the northern territories of Japan are also illegally occupied by Russia and should be liberated. The presence of Russian troops in Belarus and Syria at the invitation of illegitimate regimes is a de facto occupation of these countries against the will of their peoples. The deoccupation of all the territories illegally occupied by Russia in Ukraine and beyond means our national interests and is fair to the aggressor state, which brings death and destruction to the subjugated peoples. That concludes our today's video. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for future videos. Subscribe to UATV English and goodbye.